Hello, and welcome to the Wild Wild West podcast. My name is Richie Richey. First things first, those of you who are joining us live tonight, you will notice that we have a new Raiders face here on the show, a new but old Raiders face, and no, that was not a knock on your age.
There we go.
We got OG Daniel here, who is joining us
just
repping his Raiders. You are in front of a computer.
You are on the show.
You are live on
so.
air.
Yeah.
Right now.
It's sweeps week. We're going to you.
Yeah.
What do you mean sweeps week?
So, ladies and gentlemen, we got OG.
No, man. What are we doing? What are we talking about tonight?
We're talking about schedule and some updates for our teams, although it does appear that Alex will yet again need to probably lead us in.
It's my
lead
quote
us in
here.
with some updated Chiefs news with regards to what happened to go down in the last little bit here, and we'll call it run-ins with the law.
Yeah, seriously. From every which way, dude. They're getting pretty creative with it.
Yes, they are. Yes, they are. So, anyways, I'm Richie Richey of the MHRT Network. Down in the links below, you will find all the channels that the show is broadcast on. What?
Can you hear him? You can't hear him?
You can't hear him?
All right.
I couldn't hear him. Can you guys hear him?
Yeah, we can hear him.
Yes, I'm sure everyone else can too. It might be like a volume thing.
Since I did that update, everything's going wrong.
So we've got interesting show for you tonight in terms of schedule release. We've also got schedule release. We've got a little AFC West news. Got a little OTA news. All those sorts of things that have occurred over this week, and then likely coming in a little bit more detail next week. We're going to try and get on a couple of our opponents to have a bit of a roundtable discussion, or an opponent rather, for each of our teams to discuss and maybe ask some Q&A and whatnot. So that'd be kind of cool. Alex, Robert, how we doing today?
Doing good, sir. Just happy to be back. I know I missed last week's, but I'm back stronger than ever, and have some exciting things to talk about.
Cool.
Yeah.
So let's see if Daniel's speakers are working here. How we doing? Still where we were before. I see.
That is an ongoing subplot of the show. Will this be resolved? Stick around.
Hey, Daniel, we're gonna throw back to you in a minute if you can hear us. Okay. Just give us a wave.
This is bizarre, man.
I'm hitting them with. That's bad.
Yeah.
It's from Wedding Crashers, dude.
Yeah. All right. Let's throw over to you, Alex, and we'll start off the show.
Great. All right. Yeah, here we are in the continuing saga of starting the show off, talking about a Chiefs player in trouble with the law. So, as Richie alluded to, we might have to start a new weekly segment just called KC Law Dogs.
Yeah.
Kansas City.
Yeah. Dun, dun. But yeah, on top of everything else that has happened up to this stage of the off season, I think it was released probably about a few hours ago today that defensive tackle Isaiah Buggs has 2 misdemeanor warrants out right now related to charges for cruelty to dogs, more specifically pit bulls. I haven't really looked too much into the facts of it, but I imagine it's pretty bad if it's rose to this level. So, it's just, not much you can say about it. Irresponsible, and you can't really, say anything to give him a benefit of the doubt in a situation like that. And just unfortunate that we've kind of continued this. It's like the next man up of who's going to do something, from Rice all the way down to this. At least I will say, Isaiah Buggs has been, a practice squad level player. So, if this comes to any sort of big issue, I imagine he gets released from the team pretty quickly. As a matter of fact, I think they signed him this offseason to like a futures reserve contract because I think he was with Detroit in a similar role. But yeah, I mean, really the only thing I've seen is that the dogs were so malnourished and neglected that one had to eventually be put down, which is just as a dog owner, I don't know how someone could technically own these animals and treat them that way. But there's people like that out there. So it is what it is, in a crappy situation all around. And, just hope that it's not kind of this we're not continuing down this path of further distractions heading into, the bulk of off season and ultimately preseason training for 2024. And that things can kind of get halted too in terms of Chiefs players in the news for the wrong reasons, and we can get back on track.
Well, I mean, also announced coming up is Law and Order Kansas or
KC
Missouri.
unit.
Yeah, KC unit. Yeah, that's definitely coming up. And
In lighter news, Rashee Rice did go around passing out pizzas in Dallas. So
yeah,
he's shaking hands, kissing babies, getting back in the good graces.
But did you hear he was walking while doing it? So he couldn't hit anyone in a car.
Of course, he probably has a suspended license right now. So, I'd imagine that might be a stipulation of his release on bond.
Well, it also makes you wonder if
he's starting a new business, Rashid's Rideshare.
Yeah.
Yeah. I also think if you that may be a bit of an early tip of the hat to what you're going to see for his probably a plea deal of sorts that's probably going to come out for his driving for all sorts of bad reasons and stuff, right? So
I can see the negotiations now. Like, hey, well, if he goes and delivers pizzas, we'll sweep this under the rug.
Yeah.
You got it.
Well, no, I could see his lawyers like, well, he had an idea. Can he go deliver pizzas? Does that count? And the judge is like, yeah, that'll work.
That's it. That's great community service there.
That's great.
Very proactive.
Right, yeah. Just as long as it's pepperoni.
There's this person that was really just looking for a little shoot of H. Yeah. You gave him a nice little Caesar's pepperoni.
But I mean, and of course the judge there in Texas is like, and if you include pineapple on that, it doesn't count.
Yeah. I will add days.
We're gonna add time on. Oh man. Alex, what the hell is going on with your team?
Yeah, man. Like the quote says, man, when it rains, it pours. Who comes?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's, I kind of talked about this, I think, last week or the week before, but it's kind of been the big difference, with this offseason compared to the last few with the success they've had. It just seems like it's kind of hit that boiling over point where now it's just like there's more distractions than the actual, task at hand and on-field product. And you just hope that this isn't kind of a precursor to how the regular season will go. And things can get back on the right track, but it doesn't help when this seems to be a weekly thing. Is some Mahomes getting dapped up somewhere and then the rest of them doing something bad.
Yeah. So I don't think there's any other news that is substantial. I think I'd be remiss though if I didn't at least bring up Broncos holdout with wide receiver Cortland Sutton. We haven't really discussed that on the show, which is show me the money, make it rain kind of piece. I'm going to hold true and own my comments on X, which is basically I think he's been a great wide receiver for us, generally speaking. I think he's been productive. He's got 10 touchdowns last season. That is a production level that is not an easy thing necessarily to replace. However, he is still not really cracked 1,000-yard season since, until
I don't
his
think he's
injury.
played a full season.
And he's had at least a game or two here and there that he's missed throughout. So my general sentiment is he's not getting the same yards per carry that he used to. He's about a yard to a yard and a half, almost 2 actually.
Catch per carry.
Catch
right?
per well,
Yards per catch.
it's yards per catch really is what it kind of turns out to. And so he was averaging just prior to that injury there in 2019 rather, which was his best season. He had a 15.4 yards per catch as an average. Whereas you've had now every year since then, he hasn't cracked 14. He's stuck around that 13 and change number, which not bad, but it's not that number 1A kind of Batman style receiver that you're looking for.
Yeah. He's got the body for it. Certainly looks like it.
He's got the body for it. He's got the height for it. He's got kind of some
He's
of
a
the
beast in Madden too, I will say.
He's also got the jump ball option, which is he's been very reliable, generally speaking, with catches like that. But I do think that we've seen him perhaps miss a little bit of speed, maybe since his injury. And that comes as a major issue. And then the other piece, I'm going to kind of point to you there, Robert, which is when you see what Keenan Allen was able to do as he kind of started to age, he was running very crisp and very clean routes. And he learned very early on that he had to level up his game in order to continue to be that guy on a team. And I do question whether or not Sutton has done those same things to kind of elevate himself to the same level as say like a Keenan Allen did for your Chargers. And I would argue the answer to that is no. So my general thing and my general take, and I'd love to hear comments. I'd love to see, who likes to think I'm wrong or who thinks I'm right, which is simply this. I think he's probably worth some of that extra money he's looking for. However, I believe that it should be tied to both production and health.
Yeah.
So I think if you tie it to those two things, I mean, basically at that point there, you're telling the player to bet on themselves. And I think that is fair to the team and fair to the player. So if the team gets the extra production from the player and the player is able to put that on the field and kind of show that they were, right or correct to bet on themselves, then I say do it. However, I don't think at this point here, it's in our team's best interest to kind of quote unquote guarantee that money the way you would typically do within a contract by adding it back on, at this stage of the game.
Yeah, I think for where you guys are right now and for what you're trying to build towards the future, yeah, he's not the type of receiver you're paying, like you said, guaranteed money to. If he's a Justin Jefferson, if he's a Jamar Chase, different story. And you look at it kind of like, yeah, I think we want to keep you around, and for our eventual, or for our young, yeah, exactly, for our young quarterback, we would love to have you. So I think it's, you compared him to Keenan Allen, in terms of, how Keenan kind of evolved his game, and in that regard, Keenan was kind of elite. He was probably one of, in his prime, a top 3 route runner in the league consistently, especially, when he was healthy. But, I think he has the potential to, break out somewhere under the right circumstances. I think a change of scenery, can always help a player. But yeah, I'm with you, Rich. I'm nowhere near giving him that kind of money. If he wants to take a discount and guarantee, then awesome. But yeah, no, he's
How
not
much
worth
more is he wanting exactly?
He's wanting between, it's been rumored he's looking for $2 to $3 million extra per year for the remainder of his deal, which is, if we're going to be honest, still a discount compared to where the top end wide receivers are.
Yeah.
And it's kind of bumping him back up to where his
Into that
deal
realm.
was at the beginning, which was not the top end, but not the low end. He's kind of been that kind of upper middle end. I mean, in fairness to Sutton, and I have to be kind of balanced and fair on both sides, he's not coming in saying, I want $25 million a year.
Yeah. It's not being unreasonable.
He's not being like completely unreasonable in any of his
Fully
asks here.
guaranteed.
Yeah.
I want
But
a Kirk Cousins deal.
Right. But at the same time, the problem is that some of the things that he's done are really good. Some of the things he's done are not as good as they once were. And then you have to start questioning whether or not you're going to start.
Guys, I'm going to jump out and jump back in. I can't hear Richie.
Sounds good.
For sure.
So you have to start wondering if that's going to be a theme for him, where is he going to be able to bounce back, or is he going to be that role player that you sometimes see certain guys turn into? Allen was let go before he turned into that for the Chargers, but he was certainly kind of approaching that, I think, in terms of
He was also there longer, way longer.
Yeah. No, well, he was for sure. So you start wondering actually if, his number is under 10 mil, but that's only because he's on the back end of that deal. The early years of his deal, he was making in the 16 to 17 range, if I'm not mistaken, or somewhere in that.
It was pretty big because I think it was after he put up 1,000 yards, and then they were like, "Oh, lock him up."
Yeah, but then he got paid early on, and it kind of became more team friendly as the years went on, and I think that's fair. But you also have to remember he missed games, he got hurt, and still got paid, and so then the whole point in question here is that okay, are you going to stay healthy? Are you going to stay on the field? Are you going to do all those things? You never know.
Yeah. And I think I bet he thinks he has some sort of bargaining power because they got rid of Judy. They have a potentially rookie QB, and he's kind of the only guy that's been around. But I think that's going to blow up in his face.
I do too. I mean, you got Jalen. You got Jalen Virgil. You got Jalen Virgil on the team, who's been there for now 2 seasons. You got
Mims.
You got Mims.
Franklin,
you got Tim Patrick. See, that's the guy that I think, I don't want to say screwed Sutton over, but Tim Patrick basically made a deal to come back on I got hurt and I'm going to prove it to you that I'm worth it deal.
Yeah.
So
and he balls.
Why would you? Yeah, but why? No, but when it's
the same
healthy,
guy.
Yeah, when it's the same type of player and
same risk, less money.
Yeah, exactly. So Sutton is a good player, but
cool it, Kev.
Look, I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility. If I'm going to be honest.
Probably not.
I don't think the Chiefs would pay him.
But I don't think the Broncos would trade him to the Chiefs. I think that they would intentionally. They would intentionally keep him to not have him go to the Chiefs. I think that they would intentionally trade him to another team to at least get something and keep him away from a division rival.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I think they would take less from a different team, maybe even a team over in the NFC to. If they're looking at all their offers and the Chiefs are the best one, they're like, yeah, no, that's not happening unless they get blown away with something. But
that's my thing though, is I'm convinced that they tried to shop him at some point. Like, I mean, if they were getting rid of Judy, they were certainly calling teams like, what do you want for Sutton? And the fact that it didn't happen tells me that a lot of teams are like, no, we're good.
I mean,
probably because of the contract.
Well, I mean, not just the contract too, but you didn't trade him before the draft. You were pretty much never going to be able to move on from him after that because the draft was insanely wide receiver heavy. So if any team that needed wide receiver help, they were going to do it in the draft and they were going to do it for free because you were not going to have to spend money on it. You should just have to spend a little bit of money on it, but it's mostly just draft capital. So, and you get younger players. It's like there's just no reason, that's why a lot of these players I'm shocked they don't get traded before draft day because you're going to look at all the players that get signed post draft and it's a bunch of bargain deals. There's not really much like elite talent or even good talent that's available
Right.
past post draft.
Right. No, I agree. I agree that you're getting that kind of player there. Now, I do think that where the Broncos and Sutton's bargaining chip is in the OTA, maybe preseason, where they might trade him if a guy gets hurt. So if you have a team who has their, say number 1 or number 2 guy get hurt, Sutton would certainly be, in my opinion, the guy that I think that team's coming. They're knocking on Denver's door and saying, okay, let's just pass that guy over here. We'll give you a 3rd or a 4th or maybe a 5th or something.
And maybe that's what they're holding out for.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of what most of these teams are holding out for. They're saying, if I absolutely need him, I know I can go knock on your door and say, hey, over this away. Because every team at this stage of the year believes they can be at least somewhat competitive. And if you lose a guy this early in the season, they're going to try to replace him with somebody.
Even the Panthers?
Sure.
We take it you can hear Richie now, huh?
Yeah.
I can hear. It's wonderful.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Yes, OG, even the Panthers. And look, I never said that they were smart, nor did I ever claim that I don't think they're on drugs. Or just simply throwing beer at fans, depending on which team we're talking
That's
about.
the owner.
Right.
Or going into restaurants to confront the owner of the restaurant
taking
about a
hats.
sign. Yeah.
Yeah.
You worried about players going to jail. They need to worry about their owner.
Yeah. Their owner has a bit of a temper issue.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, just a little bit. So that's where I'm at with the Sutton thing. I think that he's kind of worth it because he's got so much production and the touchdown and stuff in that section of it. But I do think it should be tied to incentives, and I think that would be the smart way for the Broncos to go. And I think if Sutton truly believes that he can produce and is that guy, and he'd have no reason not to say yes.
I'm bringing this back as the Broncos resident. What do you think about bringing Slant Boy to a Mile High? Yeah, fair enough.
No, and you know what? It's not even that I don't think he's necessarily a good receiver. It's that
he's even worse than Sutton in terms of health.
No, but there's that. And there's also the fact that you saw what happened when he didn't get his way.
True.
He was an absolute cancer on that team and in that locker room. And so the answer is no, thank you. When he didn't get his targets and he didn't get his way and he wasn't doing all the things and getting all the things and having everyone saying, your crap doesn't stink, he was an absolute cancer in the locker room.
Yeah. And not to mention, I think I paid a pretty good amount of money to do basically nothing for the past 2-3 years. So
yes. Yeah.
It's the quickest get-rich scheme. Just lead the league in catches one year, break the record, and just fall off the face of the earth.
I've seen a lot of like Bleacher Report and stuff will say, articles of like every team's one missing piece, and they'll say KC needs to sign Mike Thomas. I'm like, no, absolutely not. That's even worse.
So the other thing, obviously, with signing guys like Thomas and all that kind of stuff, is there's going to be an expectation that they're going to be like the cog just because of the previous experience with our head coach. And I think that, if I'm going to be honest, Peyton wants to get guys that are tone setters for multiple years to change the culture within the organization. And I don't believe that Thomas is the right guy. I think Peyton has kind of been able to see from afar and also get a firsthand knowledge that just because he did well when he was there, he's now seeing what he's actually like in terms of his personality once it's amplified with money. And I suspect that, given what I know of Peyton and how he's addressed players and done things, that is a firm no. That's a firm no.
It definitely changed the culture, not for any way.
Yeah, not for the better. Yeah, not for the better. Yeah. And I'm going to use this as a great example. OG, I'm going to use your Las Vegas Raiders as the polar opposite example for a player. You had Devontae Adams, who had a stats drop off the last few years. in terms of just his overall personal success.
Mhm.
However, you have seen him come out and be, by all accounts, a class act in the way that he has behaved and answered questions and just conducted himself. And
Mhm.
so you got Michael Thomas and Devontae Adams. Devontae Adams is kind of the guy you point to say that's kind of the right way to act for a wide receiver who's still got it and hasn't done well. And Michael Thomas is the exact example that you'd want to point out to someone, say, just don't do that.
Right.
Right. And I think that's a good example. And that also, I think, says quite a bit with regards to the culture of the Raiders organization as it stands today.
Now,
As it stands today, because I think that if you were in a position where you were, not doing super well, neither are my Broncos, so that's not something that I'm kind of standing at from like a high cliff here saying, haha, but you're not doing well. You haven't made the playoffs the last little bit and his stats have fallen off, yet you still have a guy just doing the right things. And I think that's a good example for the young guys that are coming into the league. I think
And not to mention that his fallen off stats are still pretty damn good.
Oh yeah, they're not. Yeah, they're not.
You haven't had a quarterback who's been able to throw to him in the last year or so. So, last year there was nobody to throw to him. Jimmy Garoppolo doesn't have the arm. When they put Aiden O'Connell in, he started to again. But there's so many options now with, with what's his name? No.
Ours?
Our number 2 receiver, Jacoby Myers.
Oh, Jacoby, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, I like him.
This guy's good. He's really
like
good.
him
And the thing is, if Aiden O'Connell won't throw to Devontae, Jacoby will.
True.
Well, Minshew will for sure.
Yeah, well, he's going to be the backup.
Oh, so you think AOC starting right out the gate? You don't think they're going to give it to Minshew?
The reports I've been hearing about OTAs and how he's been performing, he's been like on point. He's learned he trained himself off season to be mobile. He's running and throwing now. And it's like, whoa, who's this guy? And he's got the arm. I mean, when he was in college, this dude turned the program around. He's no joke. He looks like Favre, but the guy can ball. He can ball.
Oh, look.
Just keep him away from selfies.
Oh, yeah.
The answer is no. Just the answer is no.
That's our little super trooper right there. He's I'm telling you,
sugar.
He's going to be a lot better this year. I mean, he was thrown in the fire. You're a 4th round pick. Okay.
Yeah.
You're a backup 3rd string. They throw you into the fire for the last few games of the season.
During the season, the coach got fired too.
Yeah.
Thank God. And realistically, of all the rookie quarterbacks selected last year, he was the 2nd best.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Stroud was definitely number 1, and then,
yeah. And then
Bryce Young sucks. Levis, pretty bad too.
Nope. None of them did anything, but O'Connell was out there. He did good. He started, and the end of the season, it really started picking up. So I'm looking for the momentum to continue, especially with our D-line.
So, I mean, I think that's an interest. I mean, obviously, I'm a huge proponent of both the offensive line and defensive line because I think that's kind of what really makes your team do well. However, I spoke about this with Jack, who is oddly enough
he's on to something here.
Yeah, he's on to something. But with regards to Jack on the show last week, got a question for you with regards to your 2nd round draft pick.
Mm-hmm.
News is that he's being pushed over to guard as opposed to center.
Right.
And
for a year or 2.
No, and that's fine. But I guess what I'm getting at with this is the best quarterbacks have typically had the guy that they've grown with in the offensive center position. The guy that they have kind of, laddered up with in a combination style role. Like I'm thinking, I guess somewhat recency bias. You got Jeff Saturday and Peyton Manning, who were kind of the same ilk, generally speaking. And they kind of grew up together within the league, and obviously they remained very good friends for a long time, right?
Right.
So he's getting his play time right now. I agree, Jack, at left guard. But I guess what I'm saying here is, if you're getting good, we'll call it reviews, if you will, from your rookie quarterback, why wouldn't you want to perhaps try to get the young rook at center to grow with your rookie, or not rookie, but second year QB, so that they can grow together and build that rapport?
Well, I see it this way. How many offensive linemen stay healthy for 17 games?
Point taken. Yep.
He can slide right over. Okay.
Okay, so that's interesting.
And
your current center, then, how healthy has he typically been? I'm asking because I honestly don't know.
I mean, normally pretty healthy, but you never know, man. It's the NFL. You got guys getting hurt on the offensive line constantly. You need guys that can play more than one position. You need that flexibility. You see that trend is happening more and more. So you got that rookie, and you turn around and say, hey, we slide him into center because somebody got hurt. We'll put someone else at guard. I think he'll adapt. I think he'll adapt well. I mean, the thing is, they're saying about him is he's kind of like another Richie Incognito. He's kind of a bully. I like that.
Yeah, well, he took over for, if I'm not mistaken, he took over for the offensive center that it's with our team now, the Broncos. And the offensive center we picked up in last year's draft kind of was a level up from the guy they had before. And JPJ was even a notch above him in terms of his overall stats when he was playing there. So,
right.
I mean, I think it's that says a lot, right? When you take a guy that kind of had some accolades and then Denver drafted him, and then you've kind of done even better than that, then I think that's great. And I've long said that, man, the fact you got him in the second, I think that was probably like just a crazy pickup, like just crazy.
One of the steals of the draft.
Yeah.
Right. And the thing is, and I gotta admit, this draft for the first time in 10 years was a Raiders draft where I wasn't scratching my head going, who the hell is that? And you see how we draft, okay? If you've seen how we draft over the last 10 years, that's what it is for Raiders fans. This year's like, yeah, I know who these guys are.
You're like, yes.
Yeah, that great one,
Used to be like reading the lineup in Major League, right? Who are these guys?
Our best pick was in the 7th round. We stole Trey Taylor. Stole him. You don't win the Jim Thorpe Award unless you were the best defensive back in college football. We got him in the 7th round, man. Okay, if you look at all the DBs that got the Jim Thorpe Award, you're gonna be like, wow, that's like star-studded. We got this kid in the 7th round, man. And he's highly disciplined because he went to a military academy. He turned down Brown University. He turned down Yale. He turned down Cornell. He's smart. I'm telling you, this guy is going to be the steal of the draft. And I fully believe in our 7th round pick. That one's making the team.
Well, I wouldn't doubt it. I wouldn't doubt it. I can see that happening for sure. And again, there was some weird draft positions in this year's draft, just with some different players. I mean, even the Broncos had a couple guys that I just like, well, how did he ended up in that round? Like, it made no sense. And I guess inevitably, I think what happened here is you ended up with a logjam of quarterbacks in the first round, which kind of, I think, threw off some of the other boards kind of later in the draft, where teams I think what's happening with a lot of teams now is I think they're putting weighted boards out, and I'm waiting for another draft before I kind of officially dig my heels in on that and say, yes, that's what's happening. But I think what teams are doing now is they're looking at the certain positions. OG, I'm going to look at your team again. You have your left tackle, you have your right tackle, you have your center, which is obviously a super important position. I still think that guards are not seen as a coveted position until they prove it in the NFL. So I still think teams are waiting for those guys unless they're elite in the later rounds. They're saying we can probably get those guys and develop them. But then once they get to the NFL level and prove that they're an elite player, those guys are getting paid.
Right.
And that brings me to the other position groups that I think are being weighted much higher than they ever have been. And that's your D tackles and nose tackles. Right?
Yeah.
More than ever before, these big gorilla dudes that are just like 300 pounds that can run a 4.4. Because I mean, these guys are like they are a different.
That's all of them
scale.
too. That's like even the dude in the 6th round you're picking.
No,
like,
but that's what I'm
The
saying
new
is
breed.
like I'm saying that in a literal sense. Like these guys are like 6'4", 330, and they
They're
like literally run a 4.5.
Right.
Like it's like what?
Lou Ferrigno's, dude.
This is
like,
why
I don't understand.
this is why 4.4 wide receivers aren't really considered like fast anymore, is because you have dudes that are double their body weight that are running maybe a split second slower, and it's like, well, I mean, damn, like we need
Davion Clowney.
Yeah,
running
exactly.
The same thing,
and so it's like, right, and when the biggest issue in today's game is going after the quarterback, you're going to take the D tackles all day. And like you said, Rich, we've seen it more recently with these contracts that they've been getting. These last 2 off seasons, we've seen probably more D tackles break the record for highest defensive player played, and it's just going to keep increasing because the quarterbacking position is going to keep going up, and
it's even guys that like aren't putting up,
massive
Aaron
numbers.
Donald, Chris Jones, like Barrymore in New England. He got like 100 million or whatever.
Yeah.
and I mean, like he's good, but he's not like game changing good.
That's also what happens when you are a free agent and you have to pay to retain someone if you let them slip.
Yeah, and that's actually a cool, Kev. I'm going to bring that. You're 100% correct on that comment. When the top end guy goes that high, even the lower end guys start getting pulled up as a result of kind of the raising tides, if you will, right? And I think that's exactly what's happening with some of these interior guys. Is all prices have gone up. Now, this is also because of a few other keys and pieces here, and this is why I actually don't think Cortland's going to get what he's looking for as a direct result of this. So there's a few facts that are now happening in college football. One, quarterbacks are passing more than they ever have before. So they're coming into the league with skills that, old school QBs could only dream of having at that point in their career. And so there's that. And then you end up with wide receivers now more than ever. Even dudes in the 6th and 7th round are really, really good route runners most of the time. And they have some solid resumes, backing them coming into the draft, even in the 6th and 7th round. And to your point, Robert, they're running 4.4, 4.5 at 6'2" or something obscene or crazy like that. And so I think that's an important. And they're polished, right? Which is like, again, that's
look at
crazy.
Puka, dude.
Yeah,
Puka comes out. I don't even know when he was like 5th round and just goes off. He's basically Cooper Kupp.
Yeah, exactly. So you got those two facts, and then because you have more quarterbacks that are coming out that are further along than they ever have been before, then it turns back into what I was saying about the D tackles and that interior of the line on the defensive side. That's the shortest path to the quarterback. So having a guy that can break through and get into the backfield, stop running backs, and get to the quarterbacks that are now coming out more polished than ever, you need people like that.
Or to your point, like we were saying before, and Aaron Donald, obviously he's one of a kind, but in similar builds for D tackles, you have that big of a presence to where you make the offensive line adjust to at least double team or triple team that guy and free up your other pass rushers around him. Because like you said, it's kind of, well, it's the quickest route to the quarterback. So if you can Exactly. So if you can allocate it, right, if you can force an offense to allocate more protection inwards, that opens up, the quarterback to have. I mean, you basically eliminate play action entirely.
Have, no time.
Yeah, exactly. You got like no time.
That's why we paid Wilkins.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Finally gave Crosby some help.
And gave him a raise. So, and no, Malcolm Kuntz on the other side, man, only got to play half the games this year and got 8 sacks. Malcolm Kuntz is emerging as a star on our team. And then we got that the rookie we picked up last year, Tyree Wilson, who's been training with Max Crosby in the offseason. He got thrown into a bad situation because Chandler Jones flew over the cuckoo nest. They had to throw him in there. The guy didn't get a chance to develop technique or anything else. He's been working with Max Crosby in the offseason. I'm telling you, any opposing quarterback looking over his offensive line at the Raiders are going to be looking at the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse.
No bias there at all.
Tyree Wilson, he was hurt after the draft too, right?
Right.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah, he came in hurt, and then almost immediately after the draft, Jones lost his mind.
Yeah.
I still hasn't found it.
No, he has not.
The stuff he puts out just gets progressively more kookier.
Yeah, him and Antonio Brown are out looking for their. Never mind.
They're in the CTE Hall of Fame.
Well, that's
testaments.
But that would actually. But those are actually interesting players, and I'm sure kind of when they pass, I do hope that their families will allow for the research to be done to start pushing forward the ability for earlier recognition of brain trauma, because you need the sample sizes of guys that presented with some of the known symptoms while living and confirming it while they're not living. And it takes time, sadly, and unfortunately it takes those guys to pass in order to do the full analysis currently.
Right.
And I think that getting that information, getting that data, collecting that data, seeing kind of the difference between A and B and saying, okay, something is definitely not right here. I think that will go a long way for the NFL and the Players Association, hopefully as well, to kind of come to even a better agreement in terms when it comes down to player health and safety, where you get an Antonio Brown starting to do a few things successively in a certain way. And maybe there's some kind of a program that then kind of gets kicked in to kind of better help players like that, because you hate to see that happen to anybody. Like you just did.
If you see an interview with AB before Vontaze Burfict cracked him, he doesn't even speak the same way.
No, he does not.
That's like, whoa, he doesn't talk the same way he used to. Like, that's scary right there. That's a sign to me. Like, okay, something's wrong here.
What's scarier about that AB one too is you can pinpoint it to an exact moment, like you said, the Burfict hit, because it's like night and day. Like before that, outstanding, off the field, professional, professional. I mean, he was
they put him on the cover of Madden.
Yeah, I mean, he was a 6th round pick, right?
Yeah,
or he was a super late round pick. He was a day 3 pick. So he came
Michigan.
up. Yeah, he came up the ranks. He was a punt returner. Like he worked his way up, and after that hit, I mean, it went off the rails.
Yeah. I do think part of it with him though is he's obviously got like all the bankruptcy and creditor stuff. I think part of it is like he kind of just plays more on people who think he's crazy now and does stuff to try to make money online.
Plays to the character of it now.
But I mean, you can absolutely see a difference in the two, between the two events. And honestly, I bet if you go back to a lot of players, there's probably one specific hit or play you're like, yeah, they were never the same after that.
The light switch flipped because the personality changed.
Then you see players like Luke Kuechly retire, and you're like, oh my god, like how do you retire so young? But then you see, they're
so dominant,
right? Yeah, and he had huge concussion problems, and it's like, you see some of these players, what happens? Some of these players,
and like the good. I mean, I was kind of when I was playing in college, it was kind of the transitioned to being more cognizant of like head trauma. Like they had the Guardian caps my last year, which I was like, this is stupid. But like prior to that time, it was like, okay, if you're making sense and like know where you're at, like, why do I care if your head hurts? Like, stay
Yeah.
out there. Like, if you're not passed out or like don't know what day it is, like, then there's not a problem. And that's, unfortunately not necessarily true, but at the same time, there's really no objective way to know like that you have a concussion or you have some kind of, mild TBI or something from a hit outside of, like literally losing consciousness or just not making sense. And that's kind of the problem is, it's something that you can have and just keep compounding on until you're done. And then it just all kind of comes to fruition even more.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, when I was
too.
playing, it was, are the black spots gone?
Yeah. One time in practice,
are the black spots gone? You're good.
One time in practice, we had this play where I was like the pole lead block, but my tight end had to down block the end. And if he never did, and the dude would always forget like his assignment. And if he didn't, then the end's just like coming down steaming. And this is in preseason, and our defensive end was like a 6'5", 300-pound Samoan. Like, so just picture like a thicker
Jesus.
Troy Polamalu, right?
Yeah.
And tight end doesn't block him. I'm looking for my linebacker, and we both just like hit heads like rams. And I kind of just bend over, and I'm like, oh, like I'm just blinking a bunch. And I go back to the huddle. The quarterback's like, why are you blinking? I'm like, dude, I cannot see anything but white. And he was like, well, just see. Like he's like, just get on the ball, it'll come back. And I'm like, yeah, where am I going? He had to tell me how to walk to like, he's like, just keep going straight.
Yeah.
I didn't come out, but after that, I'm like, oh, that was like, why did I do that? That's so bad.
Exactly.
And that was for no money. So imagine what I would do if I was getting millions of dollars.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and well, it's the millions of dollars thing that is 100%, is that the incentive for the players is to not come out. The incentive for the players is to keep going. The incentive for the players to say,
not have a history of
I don't have a
medical
history
stuff.
of head problems or injuries or other things, right? Because the teams will and do use that against them when it comes to contract negotiations. Now, I give a pass actually for head injuries, generally speaking, except when they are chronic.
Yeah.
Right. If it's onesies and twosies, crap happens. Fine. But if you are kind of like
every other week,
every other week you're spinning and not able to stay on the field, then at some point it has at that point become a trend, and it is clear that your body is not capable of absorbing that kind of a hit. And some guys are built for it, and some guys are not. That is cool. Totally get it. I mean, heck, look at Sidney Crosby in the NHL. Look at the Lindros brothers. Okay. For those of you who actually like hockey or watch hockey, those are two of like the best NHL players, perhaps, almost ever, in terms of two brothers that came up. And both of them were incapable of staying on the ice because of head injuries and concussions. But when they were playing and they were not hurt, they were unstoppable.
Well, Elon Musk is going to build different size and weight robots programmed with AI scanning the brains of players coming into the NFL. And then we let them play and take away all the safety rules.
There you go.
It's going to be.
I'm just waiting for the time that football progresses to what it was like in Starship Troopers.
Yeah.
Once we get to that, that'll be sick.
Yeah. Yeah. So I like I said, with that kind of stuff there, lots of cool things kind of going on, lots of interesting things occurring, and obviously things have changed. So, and that's exactly what I was saying, to kind of step in there. But one last thing, and then we'll move on to talk about a little bit going on with your team there, Robert, is I've called it before on the show, and I'm happy to have it put on record. I actually believe we're going to start seeing a regression in the wide receiver position akin to what we saw with running backs.
Ooh.
And what I mean by that is, Robert, if you look at what we've seen in this draft just passed, and you look at the wideouts that have come out just in this past draft alone, you are talking about dudes that in other years, like 4 or 5 years ago, would have been first round picks. And you're looking at guys like that are being drafted in the 3rd and 4th and 5th round. Right. And that's how deep and how polished these guys are coming out of college now. And so at that point, it's not going to be for the same reason as running backs. So the reason for the running back position is that it's a high attrition position. You're getting hit really hard and you can only last for so long. And teams are just saying, I'm not going to pay you that extra money because you're not going to stay on the field. However, I think for the wideouts, I think it's more of a supply and demand issue. The problem with the wideouts is I think there's now such a huge supply of influx young talent that can play at or close to what a dude who's, say, 26 and 27 can, and then the 21-year-old youngin comes in and can play as close to or at the same level. You're just going to be in a supply and demand curve problem. There's too much supply and not enough demand, therefore prices go down.
But I think in contrast to that, or on the flip side of that, there's quote unquote 3 wide receivers that can be on the field at one time. I mean, it really could be 4, but realistically 3 wide receivers on the field at one time versus 1 running back. And I think that's where the shift in that will be. I don't think we'll see such a decline in wide receiver, in what we pay them or how valuable the position will be, because you need to trot out there at least 2 solid wide receivers. Preferably you want to have 3, especially because we're in such a pass first offensive league that I feel like that's why wide receivers won't diminish in value, because we're in such a pass heavy league. You need those guys who are going to be reliable to catch the ball. And we say with any position, injuries absolutely happen. So I get it, especially with this last draft class, it was a ton of wide receivers, ton of O linemen. So, we see a lot of talent that went later rounds that should have gone earlier, but because there was just so much talent, it was just loaded with talent, it spilled into the later rounds. So I think we'll see that obviously not all of these wide receivers are going to pan out. A great deal of them probably won't pan out. And B, I think the ones that are elite, they can remain elite for much longer than a running back could. A running back at what could probably in this day and age, they could probably, maintain four solid years, and for a running back, that's usually their first 4 years in the league. That's when they're the most elite, is those first 4 years. Whereas a wide receiver, on the other hand, they can be elite 7, pushing 6, 7, maybe 8 years. Obviously, the best ones can be elite for that long, but a solid 6 years, and they could also still give you solid production on the back end of that. Whereas, running backs, it's like you get 4 years and then it's like, who knows? Yeah. Who knows what you'll be? You'll be Todd Gurley or you'll be Christian McCaffrey. It's like there's such flips to that. I feel like wide receiver, it's a little bit more safe. The fall off won't come as hard or as fast as it would for a running back.
Right. I guess what my only point is that even with 3 wideouts or 4 wideouts on the field at the same time, whatever, I just don't think you're going to end up with teams being able to afford top tier talent when they're getting paid 18 mil a year or 19 mil a year or 20 mil a year or whatever kind of insane dollars they're trying to command. And on top of that, in order to command that kind of amount of money, they have to be able to continue with that level of production. And so I'm looking at also the differences in team construction and team build. So as an example, the Chargers got Keenan Allen on their team with a young rookie quarterback in Herbert. So they had a veteran wide receiver that was a crisp route runner that was able to kind of get open and do certain things to allow Herbert to do well. That, I think, was a smart move. What the Chargers didn't then go out and do is get other young wide receivers that were fast or quick and that could also get open to then add additional weapons for Herbert. And I think that was a mistake on their part. The flip side,
they did try to go. You know, they did
Sure.
get Mike Williams with their first round pick the year before, you know,
Yeah.
they drafted. So I mean, they did make the
And
effort.
Quentin Johnston.
And Quinn, exactly. You know, and
Don't
they
forget
signed
about
other
him now.
guys. They drafted Josh Palmer in the 3rd round. So they made the attempt. It just didn't pan out into what they were hoping it would be.
Yeah, well, that's also drafting the right guys with the right history checks and all that kind of
Correct.
stuff too. But that's besides the point. The point is you need to build out the folks that are the right fit for the team that can stay on the field and help your quarterback win games. And I think you can certainly build those positions out with the draft, especially with what we're seeing today. And then I do agree, you're going to want that one elite wideout. But then the flip side is also true. Then you can do kind of what the Bengals did. Then you can kind of do with what it looks like the Broncos are attempting to do, which is kind of Bengals-esque, which is you get your quarterback, and then you nab the wide receiver that kind of allowed that quarterback to have that safety blanket and or, you know, no look pass or whatever kind of stuff you want to do. Just where they have that just, you know, I got it. Like you're looking for that. And I think that that's an important or an interesting approach as well. And you only get that now it seems in today's NFL. You typically didn't get that in years past. In years past, it was, I have a scheme. I don't care where you came from. I expect you to fit that scheme.
Yeah.
And you just kind of cast your line wherever you thought that fit. Whereas now it's like a chemistry / team building kind of exercise. And you're only really seeing 1 or 2 different ways of doing it successfully.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely the Bengals situation in particular is definitely a very peculiar one because they were kind of like the model at one point. You know, they had Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and Tyler Boyd on the roster at one point. That was like their core
rookie deal. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. On Burrow's rookie deal, and it's like that was the model. It's like you put 3 elite wide receivers around your young quarterback, and you let them go. What they failed to do on the flip side of that is they needed to protect their quarterback, and if your quarterback isn't staying upright, those wide receivers aren't useful.
Yeah.
This is kind of also why I love the fact that we drafted Joe Alt this year because, like you said, there was a lot of talent in this draft, a lot of wide receiver talent in this draft. You don't waste it in the first round. I like the second round use of it, but I like us getting the best blocker and not making that same mistake that the Bengals did, where you go for the shiny object instead of the not sexy pick, but this is our franchise. We need to protect him. We need to put as much in front of him as we can to protect him.
That really is the way of the NFL now anyway, is if you can't protect your quarterback, they're not throwing the ball and you ain't winning games. I mean, the Chiefs have shown that by winning back-to-back Super Bowls, that a good solid offensive line and a good quarterback will win you playoff games, basically. Right?
Super Bowls.
Yeah. I do agree with you though, Richie, that we're definitely seeing a trend of the wide receiver already being devalued because, you saw Buffalo still very much in their competitive window, just move on from Diggs because he got too expensive. And you see, similar, like San Francisco drafted a guy in the second round, even though they got Brandon Ayuk and Deebo Samuel, because they're likely moving on from one because they're going to get too expensive.
Right.
And, same thing with T. Higgins. I mean, I think I read a report every day that T. Higgins is, wanting to be traded and where could he go? And then there's same stuff now with Jamar Chase not showing up to OTAs. But I mean, one of them's getting moved because they're going to get too expensive, and that's just how we see these teams are going about it now. Is get them, pay them when you can, and then when you got to pay the QB, they find ways to move on, but get that competitive, keep the competitive balance, so to speak.
Yep.
I'll give you one guess at who's going to be moving on in Cincinnati from T. Higgins or Jamar Chase. It's
I know, but I'm just saying, but I feel like 5-10 years ago, let's say 5-10 years ago, you still got Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson, both guys who, maybe it's clickbait, but there's reports I read almost on a daily basis of like, these guys want big money. Here's moves that could make that happen somewhere else. 5-10 years ago, you weren't seeing that type of news with teams because it was like, this is our guy. this is who we run our offense through. We pay him what we pay him. And I mean, at the same time, like top dollar then was like 10 million, maybe,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I mean, that it's just a different narrative and approach to the position. And, we started, I think, probably, saw it with running backs kind of after like 2010. I feel like it's just a big decline in teams valuing running backs. And now we're kind of seeing that shift a little bit to wide receiver. Frankly, just because there's so many. So I feel like at least every year there's someone that gets drafted and is almost an immediate superstar impact. And I feel like, growing up, there wasn't like a rookie receiver outside of Randy Moss or like Calvin Johnson that just came on and lit it up immediately. Yeah. But I mean, it's like almost every year there's the next, Jamar
Right.
Chase, the next Justin Jefferson that you got. So it's just, there's guys out there that they can replace with that are way cheaper.
I think that's also why the wide receiver position, the search for that true, and I know people kind of throw that term around loosely, but that true number one wide receiver, the search for that is so dire because it's such a pass heavy offense, because the quarterbacks are the ones that are making the most money in the league, because they're the ones that are generating the most revenue for the NFL. And obviously we've seen that with the rules that they've shifted in favor heavily of the quarterbacks. In order for the quarterbacks to shine the most, you need guys that can go out there and get it. And you need guys that can consistently do it, because you don't want to have to just rely on draft every year. Like, all right, like with running backs, you can hide it. You can hide you can run a rotational running back room and you can mask it pretty well. With wide receivers, and I mean, I could speak this in front of everyone because I've seen what Herbert had to do with some wide receivers that weren't Keenan Allen and Mike Will. It's hard. It's hard for quarterbacks to go out there and make it happen when the wide receivers are not catching balls. They're fumbling. I mean, Alex, you're not getting open. Your wide receivers almost cost you, in the playoffs this year, fumbling out of the end zone. So it's
they cost games last year.
They did. Exactly. They did cost you games last year. The team that won the Super Bowl lost games last year because the wide receivers just weren't up to par of what they should have been. And I think that's why we're going to see, and like I know you mentioned Diggs, Alex, that one was a little bit of a one-off. He talked his way out of Buffalo, and we've kind of seen, he talked his way out of Minnesota, he's talked his way out of Buffalo. We've seen him kind of have a little bit of that diva trend, and that's why I feel like they moved on from him.
Yeah, well, another thing too is you guys got to consider is every draft class is going to be different. This year we were heavy on quarterbacks, wide receivers, and tackles. Everybody wanted them. You know what I mean? And that moved a lot of great players down. What's next year's class going to be yielding? Okay, because if you're not heavy on wide receivers for a couple of classes, they will not be devalued. Matter of fact, you don't see a heavy on running backs in the next couple of years. Their value is going to come back. I think it's going to be a trend thing of what's coming out that's really, really impactful. And that's what teams are going to jump on. Okay. What happens when Arch Manning comes out in the draft? You know what I mean? How many people are going to be fighting for that kid? I mean, they say he's better than Peyton and better than Eli. Okay. But is it going to be a quarterback heavy draft? Because if it's not, that's coveted. You see what I'm saying? This draft was quarterback heavy. Ain't going to necessarily be that next year. It may be a different position. You may have defensive ends one year that everybody wants, I think that trend of like running backs, that's not going to continue. I think eventually people are going to be like, okay, we need a good, solid core of running backs. And there's not a lot of them available. Time to pay some guys,
No. So where I think you're going to go with running back eventually is almost what Jerry Jones did with the Cowboys. So I think he was a bit of ahead of his time with what he did with Zeke, but then I think he made the mistake of them paying him that big contract because it obviously didn't work out. So before you shake your head, like I actually think this is probably going to be an interesting look ahead to what we might see in kind of moving ahead in other areas, which is you're going to find an elite or great running back in the draft. And I mean like game-changing running back. And they will go in the first round to two teams because there's value in having that really, really good running back who's young, right? Able to not get hurt, able to make plays and makes a massive difference to your team. Then I think what you're going to start seeing the trend is they're going to just move on from the dude and not give him that second contract.
Right.
And I think that's what you're going to see from running backs.
See Josh Jacobs. Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
I would also add, though, I think one reason running back's a little more devalued is, if a team has a good offensive line, you can almost have anyone back there that's got some sort of straight line speed and will move your offense,
and doesn't fumble,
and will cost you a vet minimum. Whereas, like what Robert's talking about, wide receiver, to some degree, you're on an island. Like, if you're good enough to get open, then we'll figure out a way to get you the ball. And that relies on your skills alone. But you see the Chiefs, they don't really value a running back, but they have a good offensive line and can get an athlete back there to, use the position the way they need it to move their offense.
They do have a good running back, though. That obviously helps. They have that.
But I'd almost guarantee you, once it gets time to paying Pacheco, they will draft someone else and just let him go and bring him back. Hey, no one wanted you. Why don't you come back for a year, $8 million or whatever? Okay,
that is the advantage of having Mahomes. Is that you don't have to
because he's going to see you as a competitive option, and that is a coveted piece for any player. I don't care if it's a previous one on your team or otherwise.
Yeah.
I do want to quickly answer Biggie's question here below. No.
Saw that one coming.
So for starters, Higgins is not a lineman. So we'll just start there.
He can put some weight on him.
Yeah, and this is not a pig farm. We don't fatten wide receivers up and say, "Hey, now you're a tackle." That's just not the way things work. That's just not the way the NFL works. I'm sorry, I hate to break it to you. The whole point here is, in my opinion, we're going to see some progression on the offensive line and some regression on the offensive line. And I also think that far too many Broncos fans are looking at certain stats for the Broncos offensive line from last year, and they are not paying attention to the league year being broken into sections. We did have a great offensive line in the early stages of the season. Our running game was excellent in the early stages of the season. As the season went on, we were seeing the run game become less effective, and we were then passing a little bit better. But ultimately, near the very end of the season, we saw a drop-off almost unilaterally across the board overall. And yes, Russell Wilson held onto the ball too long. Yes, Russell Wilson couldn't read defenses. I agree with all of that. So you're not going to get an argument from me there. But I think that our offensive line is nowhere near good enough to move bodies out the way, and they were not healthy enough to sustain and be on the field the entirety of the season together. That is a problem. So I think that we would do better as a team to trade Cortland and a pick for, say, a better guard, or perhaps maybe get a better tackle or something along those lines. I think that would be a better investment for us. Or to kind of go to what OG Daniel was talking about with his Raiders bringing in a new defensive lineman, you go and get yourself Cortland Sutton, package a pick, and get yourself a guy that a team can't afford when they have two linemen in the interior that are good and they can only afford one. You go get the other lineman that fits your team from a team like that. And there's a few of them out there that I think are going to be finding themselves in situations like that in the near future. I think that would be Denver's better approach. I like the fact that we are going young at wide receiver and letting the wide receiver and now the young quarterback in Bo Nix, you allow them to grow together and build that chemistry, and you see what happens. In my opinion, that's the better approach.
I agree with that. I wanted to, or actually this way, I wanted to address what Jack asked me about where do I think Alt is going to play, either left tackle or right tackle. I personally see him sticking at right. That being said, he's an injury away from going over to left tackle, or and honestly staying there, because I feel like if he does get his shot at left tackle, he's not going to give it up. It's just a matter of time of if and when that'll happen. If he turns into, what Penei Sewell did, and, he transitions smoothly to right tackle, hey, I'll take an all-pro left tackle and that behemoth of a man at right. Thank you very much. And then, you just go worry about getting your center. But I think it could go either way. And I think the biggest thing will be, if he does get a chance to start at left tackle at any point, he will never go back. But it's just a matter of, will he get the opportunity?
Yeah, you already know my thoughts on this. I think that if the Chargers were smart, I give credit to Harbaugh, but we'll see what he's going to do.
Mm-hmm.
But if the Chargers were smart, in my opinion, you're going to say, dang, we drafted Slater, and wow, was that an awesome pick. However, he was the absolute best right tackle in his draft class by a country mile. And isn't it amazing that he's proven that he can be an all-pro left tackle as well? You move Slater to the right tackle position. You tell him, don't worry, we got you, because there is a bit of a value difference that typically occurs between left and right tackle.
Right.
You pay him maybe
like he's a left tackle.
Like you pay him a little bit more up front, like he's a left tackle, to kind of solidify him on your team and keep him there. And then you move Alt to his natural left tackle position, where he has built up the musculature and all of his technique throughout college. And you let him leverage his length on the left-hand side, because you do have a right-handed quarterback, and having that additional pushback and flexibility on that left side, I think, is more important than hoping, to your point, that Slater doesn't get hurt or any of that kind of stuff. I'd rather push Slater back to his natural right tackle spot and have him kill it. And make no mistake, Slater will go to the right-hand side. And you've heard it here first. He will be. People will ask why they ever moved him to left tackle in the first place. Okay, so leave that out there.
Well, people wonder why we moved him to left tackle. You should look at who we had at left tackle before he was there, and that'll answer your question as to why we put him at left tackle.
I get that. But the point is that I actually think he will be an even better right tackle than he is a left tackle.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of in it's in Harbaugh's hands at this point. They know what they have in the building. We can only assume from so far what they're gonna do, or what kind of conversations they've had with Alt and Slater. From everything all the reports I've read, from everything that's been reported, it looks like that they've all been getting along well. The line is starting to gel. OTAs have been looking really good to start. So yeah, I'm very curious to see what they'll do with him, or what adversities will come this season, and how, because it's impossible to think that you're gonna finish with the same 5 O-line you started with to start the season. It's just you're lucky if you're lucky if you got 3 that make it through fully healthy the whole way. So with all that, and depending on what happens in the season, I think I'm hoping, Jack. I'm praying, man. I'm really
for
hoping.
sure. On paper, it definitely is.
On paper, but we've said that so many times about the Chargers before. On paper,
so as the resident lineman, I think I should share my 2 cents on this.
Yes,
not kidding. But I kind of agree with what Richie's saying a little bit. But also, I mean, I think Slater's the only one that actually has right tackle experience. So, I think just makes the most sense to not, put your rookie in an even tougher situation of like, hey, let's move you to the spot that you're totally unnatural with and figure it out, rather than at least put you where we know your skill set, your elite skill set is finely tuned, and let you figure it out, the toughness of the NFL. It just, I think for the purposes of changing what Harbaugh wants to do, it just would make the most sense to move Slater. And I'm sure that's probably what has been discussed.
Yeah, but realistically, you look at most rookie tackles, they take 2 to 3 years to develop. Most.
Yep.
Not all of them, okay? But I mean, for instance, we got this guy, Colton Miller. First year, hated this guy. Second year, I'm like, eh. Third year, everybody's screaming, why is this guy getting snubbed for the Pro Bowl? You know what I mean? He sucked until year 3. Richie Incognito came in and turned him into a bully, and boom, he was good. Boom. Did I just say boom? Anyway, no, but I'm saying is most of the tackles that get drafted, and there were a lot of them this year, okay?
Yeah.
You're going to see guys that you think should be elite and are going to look like clowns for the first year, okay?
Mhm.
They got to develop. Development takes time for tackles.
Yeah, I will say I think Alt is the most ready, the most
Right.
NFL ready out of any of the tackles.
Right.
And-
There's always that one that comes out and plays like a freaking superstar.
Hoping it's this one.
And it's probably Alt.
Hoping it's the one we took.
Well, but part of that is also going to be, Robert, what position your team puts him in. Like, I actually kind of look at what Alex just said there. Is like, okay, you got this big behemoth of a dude that was hands down deemed one of the best left tackles coming out of the draft in Alt, right? It's not that he had the most upside out of everyone. They said the dude's polished right now.
His
upside
is now.
Like he's already polished. There was the
Right.
other dude. Is it Dobkins, or is that the guy's name? I can't remember.
I think you guys are forgetting somebody, but he was a right tackle.
Well, no, Fuaga was never going to be a left tackle. He was always a right.
That's where they're putting him now.
Yeah. They're
the
moving
Saints,
him to
the
left.
Saints are putting him at left.
They
Well, they got that
moved-
Ramcheck or
moved-
whatever. He's good.
Ramcheck's hurt.
Yeah,
He may
he's
not-
going to retire.
And then they're moving Trevor Penning, their first round pick from a couple of years ago, who came in injured, over to right. And they're putting Fuang on the left. And I'm like, this is going to go really, really good, or it's going to go really, really bad.
Really bad. Yeah.
And
I mean-
do you know what's awful with that though? Is that can kill a lineman's development at the
Right.
NFL to a point where it's irreparable. Like
Dude,
as in
but
there is
they
no
brought in
coming
that-
back.
Right, but they brought in that I'm sorry, this guy has been doing this for 40 years. Benton, their offensive line coach. This guy's really good at spotting talent, spotting things. He's the one that made that decision. So,
To move left.
yep. But but here's the thing: Fuaga's college coach, coached him for 4 years, said we're going to put him on the left, but there was somebody already there, so we put him on the right. But he could play both.
Yeah.
He said it with with some authority, So we'll see what happens, but
Well, he certainly would be better than Trevor Penning. Trevor Penning was pretty bad.
danger. Yeah, it's like danger, Derek Carr.
Yeah.
Derek Carr's used to not having protection, so I'm sure.
Yeah, but
he'll be fine.
realistically, look at it. 9-year career with the Raiders. He got more injuries last year than he did his entire 9 years with the Raiders. That line was going to get him killed.
Oh, yeah.
That's true.
Yeah, the only concern you have with a guy like that is you're asking for him to change his entire technique that he is trained at the college level for and come to the NFL where the guys are bigger, better, and stronger. And so and Biggie, you're absolutely right with regards to this. You're going to inevitably probably have one of those rookies that's going to look like absolute trash. Right, like first year for sure, and then they're gonna have to start learning to gel with the other guys on the line, and eventually by the end of the year they might look a bit better. Notice a bit better.
Correct me if I'm wrong too, but didn't the Steelers draft a left tackle last year and are moving him to right this year after taking another tackle?
Yep, after taking Fotano. right?
Yeah, so that's
Yeah.
but that's your last ditch effort to try to save the dude you
That's
drafted
what I'm.
that
That's
wasn't
yeah.
good, right?
Right.
That's what I'm
Yeah.
saying.
Right.
Yeah, and it's the NFL is an imperfect science when it comes to drafting, but there are certain things that are generally accepted. So I don't know if you guys know Orlando Franklin from the Denver Broncos. He was an
Former
absolute
Charger.
yeah, but he was an absolute animal when he was with us at right tackle. He was the run guy. So he was that big body guy that wasn't quick, but would just throw dudes out the way. He was a very, very strong right tackle for the Denver Broncos. He actually got exposed in our Super Bowl loss to the Seahawks because what he struggled with was speed, and they kept throwing speed guys on his side. So it kind of kept throwing us off, and obviously we lost that. But that kind of just goes to show that knowing what you're good at and knowing what you're not good at is actually kind of a really important piece. And then immediately the next year, he kind of dropped a little bit of weight to kind of improve his mobility. And that just kind of goes to show self-awareness. So you have to give him credit where credit's due there. I digress, though. The point is, when you start moving a guy, and this is what Franklin was speaking to for the last 2 years now, actually, is when you work on that one side, he goes, it's the equivalent of asking a right-handed person to throw left-handed. It can happen. You can find out that you're darn near ambidextrous, and that's a great accident for you to come across. Good for you. But at the end of the day, when you have developed a certain technique in a certain way and a certain style, and then you're then in like what the Saints are doing with Fuaga, and you're with, what you're maybe doing with Alt by throwing him on the right versus the left. We're going to see other examples of this over the course of this year, I'm sure too. We're going to be saying, dude, the guy was like the number 2 left tackle, and you've thrown him on the right. Or in the Saints case, that was like the number 1 right tackle.
And you're throwing him on the left.
You throw him on the left. Like what?
What is happening?
Yeah, it's like, dude, like what kind of upside down universe is this nonsense, right? But I
heard an offensive lineman that was a tackle who used to play in the NFL, and they were talking about that, and he said, look, it's like going to England. You go to cross the street, you got to look the opposite direction of what you're used to looking, or you're going to get run over. Yep. And that's, I get it. I see that. Yeah. He said, but it's better than moving him to guard because that's a whole different position.
Oh, yeah. If we would have thrown Alt at guard, I might have just have to turn in my fandom, because at that point I don't even know what's happening. But I feel like with Alt, and maybe this is just like completely reading into it like deep, and this is like maybe me looking through my my powder blue lenses, but I almost feel like Harbaugh is like wanting to see how he handles like adversity, how he handles not being comfortable, how he's not going to be at his natural position. But he does that because with the intent of, if he has to play right, it's not going to be like, oh I have no idea what I'm doing, this is my first time ever. He basically doesn't want his first time at right tackle to be in an NFL game, where it's like, I'll prepare you. You're good on the left. There's pretty much nothing we can really, if anything, it's just going to be a lot of refining and nooks and crannies as to what we need to fix with you. But as far as him on the left, he's pretty much set. But I think, putting him on the right, it's kind of like seeing like, how will he react? How will he look on the right if we need to put him on the right? It's kind of like Harbaugh almost preparing for anything and everything that could happen throughout the season. But I agree. I think he should be at left, and we move Slater to right. But I'm also, on the side of Harbaugh kind of knows what he's doing, and I trust in what he's got this group going.
Yeah.
Well, and they say switching from left to right or right to left is just basically taking reps and muscle memory. Mm-hmm. And you get enough reps and develop enough muscle memory, you'll be all right.
Right.
Yeah, it's still a very difficult thing to remember. Dropping your it's hilarious. Dropping your other leg back in your drop, so your left leg versus your right.
And there's kicking out.
Yeah.
Out.
Yeah, a lot of that stuff, and you think of it as like, well, you're a pro, you should figure that out. It's like, okay, yeah, you go try to do something complete opposite way that you're used to doing for goodness knows however long. Let me know how you do, and then we'll talk, right? So I think that's I think it's a challenge, and some dudes like Slater kill it, right? Kill it.
Yeah.
Good for him, right? But I think there's far more guys that end up getting thrown into the wrong spot because some coach thinks that he's really good and can kind of turn water into wine or crap into gold. And I think that most of them get proven wrong, right? Most of them get proven wrong. And I think a lot of coaches, more so than players, I think coaches ruin more players than players ruin themselves, because I think they're being forced into doing something and then they start losing confidence in themselves that they can actually do the thing that they know how to do. And they never fully recover because they just think, I can't do it at this level, so I'm done.
Coaches' egos do that.
Well, yeah, that's exactly what I was getting
Okay.
at, right?
See, Josh McDaniels.
Yeah.
But no, I used to
Brandon
play
Staley.
some ball myself. I played semi-pro. I did get a trial with the Rams when they were in Anaheim, but I was our team's nose tackle. We ran a nickel defense, okay? Old school nickel defense. I was a nose tackle. I did pretty well at what I did. Obviously, I got a trial with the Rams. But I was also our team's backup kicker. Extra points, field goals, stuff like that. And I walked up to the kicker and I told him, I said, if you get hurt, I swear I will freaking kill you in front of your family. Do not get hurt. I hated that.
Right. I do want to maybe bring up another position group. Just the last little minutes of the show, we spoke about the position group, but I think this is an interesting one for all of our teams, just because, with the exception of Alex's team, I'm not saying exception is such a negative way. It's just your coach has traditionally not valued this position group, and that's the running back group. Andy Reid has certainly not been, a huge running the football kind of guy. He's not known for it. We'll just put it that way. However, the Raiders have had Josh Jacobs and some immense success when it comes to running the football. Denver Broncos have had a storied history of a solid running game with several different running backs, over the years. And your coach, Robert, now is known for running the football and running a very kind of gritty style offense, which is what he is known for. So I'm going to throw over. Actually, I'll start with you, OG, and talk about your current running back room with the Raiders and what you think you're going to do and how it may work out.
Okay, well, I think we were looking at going running back by committee. But after the performance of Zeus, Zamir White, we may have another bell cow. I'm not sure. The last part of the season, we won some games because of him. Okay. And I'm not going to try to bring up Christmas Day or when we hung 63 on the other guys, but
he did do well in those games.
He did well in those games, and I'm like, oh wow, because he developed something that he didn't have the year before, and that was patience. Patience to see it open up. If we have to go running back by committee, I'm good. We got a lot of running backs, good ones. Okay, we got a guy we drafted last year, Britton Brown. We got or 2 years ago. We got some other guys. I think our running back room is fine. Don't get me wrong. I'm still angry about how my team treated Josh Jacobs, and he's probably going to go to Green Bay and just say, "Hey, look, watch this." You know what I mean? But I think our running back room's healthy. I think we're good.
Yeah. I like the Madison too, if you're pairing him with someone, because we saw him in Minnesota when he was a thunder to lightning. He did pretty well. When you give him the full reins, not so good. But
Dalvin Cook wasn't really even there for a lot of that, so he kind of was the lead back in Minnesota for a bit.
No, I'm interested to see how Zamir White does in a full season, because I mean that, like, Christmas Day he balled out and then doubled down. And what Kenneth said too, however, Laub or Lube,
Lobby.
yeah, Lube, when we call him Lube. No, but he's an intriguing running back too, because I mean he kind of brings a totally different game than the other two guys we discussed, and he could, I think, certainly carve out a pretty big role.
I think he's got a high ceiling, big potential.
Yeah.
But he hasn't played in a game yet, so he ain't nothing yet.
True.
Well, you got to always wait and see, because the moment you start saying a guy's going to do this, that, and the other, you find out that you were wrong, right? So
right.
Yeah.
I need to see it.
Yeah. So that's the Las Vegas Raiders in your running back room. You're probably thinking, from what I gather, that you're going to probably lean heavier on Zeus, but then you're going to kind of sprinkle in some of the others that you have on the roster and see if any of those other guys kind of hit as well, is what I'm kind of gathering.
Well, yeah, but I mean, if other guys start rising up, then it's probably going to go more running back by committee. Not sure. But with all the passing weapons we have, let's see what happens.
Yeah. So that's the Vegas Raiders. If there's any folks in the chat that have any questions for OG Daniel on the running back situation there in the Las Vegas, go ahead and leave those in the chat, and we'll pull those up and we'll get those answered as Robert is giving us his breakdown for his team.
So I mean, kind of looking where we're at right now, the biggest, or the position group I kind of wanted to focus on, was the linebacking core. As you can see, I have the PCH. For those of you who aren't aware or who don't know about it, here in California, we have a very famous highway known as PCH, Pacific Coast Highway. There's actually also the three initials of our three linebackers that we're running out: Perryman, Colson, and Henley, Dayon Henley. Sorry. And I feel like this is gonna be, and I've talked about this before too, about the defense, but this position group in particular is going to be the most important for us moving forward, because our defense last year, the last 2 years, I should say, have been complete polar opposite ends. We had a great run defense last year and the worst pass defense. We had a great pass defense the year prior and a horrible run defense. So I feel like the linebackers, that has been the one constant in why it's been such a letdown of this defense and why we can't find really any stability. And I feel like Harbaugh will be, and especially Minter, will bring these linebackers ready to play. They're going to be moving, flying across the field. We finally have some youth at the linebacker position, whereas before it was just a lot of veterans. We had Kendricks, we had, Kenneth Murray was, kind of younger, but he was really hit or miss. So I feel like I love the Perryman signing. I love the veteran presence that he brings. And then you have your two young guys. You have obviously Colson, the rookie, with Henley, the second year pro. And, if all the reports are coming out that Colson's going to be wearing that green dot. So, he's going to be essentially the leader of that entire defense. I'm very confident in that group, in what they'll do. I'm not going to sit here and say we're going to be, top 10, top 5 defense, whatever, but I feel like you're going to see a much different Chargers defense this year from that middle level of the field, and, obviously moving up into the front four. And it's going to be, it's not going to be, maybe we're not top 3 and bottom 2, maybe we're top 10 and maybe in like the low teens. So I just want to see some consistency on this, and something we can build on and improve on the following season.
Yeah. Interesting.
We talk about running backs.
No, he was talking about linebackers. He immediately
he took the ball and said, "I'm going home."
Yeah.
The running backs are
very passionate about.
Listen,
you just had to get your thoughts. I need to go here.
I wanted to approach it in a different way. Not so much talk about our running attack, but more so how we're going to defend against
There
the
we
run.
go.
Yeah, I didn't. Our running backs, there's really it's kind of not much to talk about. Gus Edwards is pretty, he's pretty
He
established.
basically just took the
And-
Ravens run game and brought it to the Chargers.
Right, and J.K. Dobbins is just where it's just can he stay healthy? And anything we get out of him is going to be a positive. I don't think it's going to be, I will say this. I expect Herbert to be running the ball a lot more this year than in past years. We saw him run at Oregon in the Rose Bowl. We know he has legs to move, and it almost just seems like Staley and the offense were like afraid to let him run with it. But we've seen games where he wins them with his legs. So I don't be surprised if you see Herbert, and I don't want to throw out a number, but if he's averaging like 10, 15, maybe 20 yards a game rushing, kind of like in the Mahomes aspect where it's very timely runs. It's 3rd and 8 conversions, it's 3rd and 4, those plays where as a opposing fan you're like, mother, like what again? Like we literally just come on, it's 3rd down. Like those are the plays that and ultimately those are the plays that really break a defense, where you have perfect coverage on the back end. And the blockers just you beat them, and you got him outside the pocket. You got the quarterback running out, and he freaking runs it and weaves past one linebacker, one DB, and he's got a first down. And it's like we did everything right, and we still couldn't stop him. And it's like those are the plays that when you're in the game, you're like, oh, that lost it for us. Those are the back-breaking plays, and we need more of those. We need those definitive game-ending plays or back-breaking plays.
Richie Richey. We're talking running backs, Chargers fans. Squirrel!
Yeah. Yeah. So, Robert, next week I'm going to ask you about your safety
linebacker. Oh yeah,
safeties.
I'll tell you about the O-line.
And then we'll get your running back information. Then I'm trying to work out your Rubik's cube. I'm trying to work out your Rubik's cube kind of
he just
cipher here to get to the bottom of what I need to ask. So we'll figure that out next week.
What I do want to know, Robert, is what do you think if any impact will Vidal have as a dynasty fantasy player? I need to know this.
As a dynasty fan for your fantasy podcast.
Yes.
The thing is, like, I don't know if for this team you can really commit to one running back. Like, I don't know if Harbaugh will. I'm sure he'll want to, and we're going to be looking for that running back to be the bell cow and the full commit. But kind of like how we're tying into what we were saying earlier, it's a pass first league, and the running back position is, as we've seen in probably the last decade, is easily replaceable in the later rounds. And so it's it's almost like you don't want to put all your eggs in that one basket, in one running back's basket, because of the chance of they get hurt and their career is completely derailed, or they have their one great year, and we've seen a lot of this too. They have one stellar year, career year, and then it's just completely downhill from there. They never live up to that rookie year or first year that they have. So I think he'll be a great kind of like what Pollard was that first year when Elliott was there, and Elliott was kind of like the bell cow, and then you'd bring in Pollard for your third down back, and it kind of like fooled people a little bit into thinking that Pollard was like an elite running back because he would get those third down plays, and he'd break them for 40, 50 yards, whatever it was, and sometimes take them to the house. So I think he can be kind of like that and play that kind of like scat back kind of thing, and maybe catch a little bit out of the backfield as well. That's kind of like he kind of wants, like, I think they plan on him being yes. I think they plan on him.
Tell me more.
They plan on him being like Eckler's kind of like replacement in a sense. So I'm excited to see what he can do, but I don't expect him to have like a 1A, 1B, maybe even 2A role in this year's offense.
Awesome.
So I did a little bit of running back talking.
We got in there. Yeah.
Yeah, we got it in. I want to quickly jump into my Denver Broncos, and then we'll finish off the show, Alex, with
I'm washing my sheets, man. Why you gotta call me out like that? It's just the pillows on there. Like, come on.
You sick bastard.
That's funny. Big E, I do have one question for you. Why are you looking at Robert's bed?
Oh, Jesus.
I mean, just I had to ask, right? I mean, anyways, with regards to the Broncos running back room, and this is the other piece is Sean Payton has almost always had a fullback in his offense. So when you group together running backs for the Denver Broncos, you have to factor in that probably at least one in that room is going to have to be a fullback. And then the question is, all right, well then just how many running backs are you then going to carry on your roster? And I think that once you really start factoring that in, you start getting into some real questions. I mean, like legit real questions with the Broncos. So Javonte Williams never really looked the same after his injury. Symposium Perine was definitely the guy that came in that looked the best out of all of the running backs last year, except for Julian McLaughlin. But then in this year's draft, we got Audric Esteem, which I am really excited to see play.
I took him in my dynasty, one of my dynasty
really
drafts,
excited to see play.
Tell me about him.
I see him kind of being almost a replacement for Javonte, if I'm going to be honest. I'm just being honest, and what I'm seeing is he is a kind of an aggressive runner. He can catch the ball out of the backfield. He can kind of do a bunch of stuff that I think they asked Javonte rather to do when his first year rather. And they tried to have him start doing some of that last year when he was with the team, but he never kind of built on any of those plays. He had like a reasonable play and then he just didn't do well. And then we have Tyler Batty coming back, who actually looked fairly good in the preseason last year, and then got hurt, and we kind of kept him. And then we have Blake Watson, who we got as a UDFA. He did very well in college. Certainly a coveted free agent in the UDFA class.
Where was he out of?
Pardon me?
Where was he out of? What school was he out of?
That I can't remember.
Here, I can tell you.
That maybe. I can't remember.
Memphis.
Got it.
He's been walking in Memphis.
Yeah. So I think we have a very interesting running back room, and I think there's going to likely be some surprise cuts. I predicted already, I think, on one of our shows that I do wonder if it's going to be more likely than not that if Javonte doesn't absolutely just blow the doors off in preseason, that he could well be shown the door this year. I'm just either that, or if Javonte blows the door off, then I think Perine is gone, and I think that at least one or two of these other guys are kind of going to be taken over.
I think
Jack's definitely got his old Rudy goggles on, but I'm for that because I did draft him. So
yeah. And then Jaleel had some great success for the majority of the year, but then kind of started to taper off a little bit near the end. You know what? That's actually a real possibility if we're going to be honest. Either one of those top two running backs that's currently on the depth chart now would probably do very well in Dallas or with another team. So it's possible that we could get like a 6th or 7th.
Literally, Dallas has Zeke and Deuce Vaughn, so they need someone.
Rico, what was that, like Rico Dowdle or someone too?
Who?
Yeah, exactly.
Uncle Rico.
Yeah. But I actually think that that the Broncos are going to be in for some real tough decisions at the running back position, because I think that each of those backs bring. There's like 2 or 3 of them that are similar, and then there's 2 or 3 of them that are also similar. And then so the question is, which one of them beats out the other one for that job, kind of thing? Because you're not going to keep 3 guys that are, for example, kind of scat back style. You're going to keep one probably, just because you never know what's going to work. So it'll be interesting.
Rudy.
And just to be clear, there's no one on our roster in the running back room proper that could really do a good job and double as a fullback. So it's not like you can cut the fullback position and have it kind of be just like the big back stepping in as a fullback from time to time. So I do think that means that Michael Burton stays on the team, which then means that you're probably looking at most 3 running backs on the roster in addition.
I love that I knew what Biggie meant, but like it's just funny how he went about it. Talking about trading P. Ryan.
Oh,
I knew it. Come on.
I was wondering what he was trying to do with the P. I was like, what?
Oh, that's good.
I think it'll be P. Ryan too, because he's just the
P.
older guy.
Ryan.
But yeah, P. Ryan. I think you'll get a solid 5th round pick for whoever you trade.
Yeah, but the problem is that for he got the tough yards for us last year. Like, that's the problem.
That's why you got your new shiny esteem.
Right, but it's
time.
It might be his time. You're right. It might be his time. But you need to see it first. So I'm kind of with OG there saying, on paper, and this is kind of the Robert thing, on paper, the Chargers look good. Well, on paper, he certainly looks to be the dude. He certainly looks like he could be that guy. But you need to see him against other teams. You need to see him play against other guys that are wanting to make a roster and are willing to put their bodies on the line to stop him from getting those yards. And you're not going to start seeing that until preseason and a little bit later in preseason. And frankly, I'd like to see what happens there with him. But I do think it's going to be
dilly.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm bringing it back.
I agree. So anyways, that's where I kind of think the Broncos running back room is. I do think we're going to be continuing to run the football either the same or more than we did last year. And I do think that you saw an emphasis on that with who we picked up and why and where we picked them up as well in terms of the draft, because the Broncos certainly had other holes we could have filled, but we instead targeted a running back, and we definitely didn't necessarily need to then double dip with another guy who is, like I said, he was sought after and coveted with Blake Watson. So I think that kind of goes to show that I think the Broncos are going to want to be, heavy into running the football, which is also typical of Sean Payton's offense. And
especially with a rookie QB.
Yeah,
you're
exactly.
Going to want to. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. So anyways, that's where I see the my Denver Broncos here with what we got going on. I'm certainly excited to see the success of the run game. However, unlike some of the others in the mainstream media at large, the run game runs through and is dependent on the offensive line. The running back themselves is not going to be the ones to open up those holes to allow them to run through. So it will all eventually be dependent on whether or not that O-line can actually play and do their job. And if they can, then I think our running game is going to be pretty good this year. With that in mind, Alex, I'm going to throw over to you to close out the show and take it home with your running back room and what you think is going to go on.
Yeah, so the D tackles.
God, now I'm never going to live that one down.
We've got a pretty good group in the D tackle room.
Hey,
I got 3
Chris
things I'm
Jones,
going to talk about, and y'all are going to sit here and hear about them. You are right, Rick. It does start in the trenches, but I need to talk about RBs. And yeah, so as you kind of alluded to earlier, Richie, Reed, at least with his offense, it doesn't really require, a true bell cow type, Derrick Henry or Josh Jacobs or players of those caliber, just because he doesn't use them in that way. But with that being said, I mean, he certainly likes to carry a lot of depth in the offseason, because I think the Chiefs currently have 8 running backs on their roster, between undrafted free agent signings and other free agents they brought in. I'll say for the most part, Reed has always operated with a 3 running back system, and they all 3 get time. He certainly, will kind of ride the hot hand at some points in the season, but for the most part, it's Pacheco with 2 other guys complementing him in a more pass catching type role, or just change of pace. And looking at who they had last year with who they've got on the roster, I mean, the only person they're looking to replace is Jerick McKinnon, who I certainly had a hell of a year 2 years ago when he had 9 receiving touchdowns. But as that was kind of seen, was a little bit of a fluke. Because he did not really, I don't think, put even remotely half of those stats up in the next season, and is still a free agent, so I guess there is potential that he could be returning. But I think that with the fact he's not there, certainly leaves somewhat of an open battle, I think, for the RB2 and RB3 complementary roles. I mean, they brought Clyde Edwards-Helaire back, but he is pretty much a solidified bust. And I was pretty pissed off they brought him back, just because it's like we just get nothing out of him. So, like, what's the point of holding a roster spot? But, it is what it is. And I think the deal they signed him back, if there's enough to blow, Andy Reid away with who the younger guys, there's good potential that he could just get cut once we get to that point. So, I mean, pretty solidified in terms of having Pacheco and still on his cheap deal, 2 more years of pretty cheap ball out of him. And I mean, the guy's somewhat to this point shown to be an indestructible Big Mac truck when he gets the ball. So, excited to have him in the offense and go into year 3, but interesting to see what will happen, in terms of RB2 and 3. And just some guys that I think are the ones to look out for. I mean, they did sign that Welsh rugby player, which I'm intrigued about, but at the same time, I don't know that he will be making a 53-man roster this year. But, he's certainly a hell of an athlete, and we could see if things progress quicker or better than you would think with making such a drastic change, maybe he does. But Deneric Prince, Deneric Prince, another practice squad guy from last year. He's out of Tulsa, but he was, one hell of a running back. If you go back and watch his college tape, and he was a guy that even was getting some praise last year as an UDFA, and obviously enough for them to keep him around and bring him back. And he's kind of his game's very similar to Jerick McKinnon, if not better. Yeah, exactly. Who? But he's one I'm pretty excited about seeing get more exposure and more involvement in the offense after 1 year being in the building. And then the 2 other UDFAs that I'm pretty excited about, Carson Steele out of UCLA, who's, a hell of an athlete, kind of a similar, he's a white Pacheco to some degree, like has this fast straight line 40 and just kind of runs, violent. So, I mean,
see, I think he's the guy that'll make your roster.
Yeah, no, I think between one of those 2, they're going to, because they were big priorities for Veach. He specifically named those 2 when talking about the 19 UDFAs he brought in. And yeah, I think it's almost a lock that one of them does. And the other one being Imani Bailey, who was out of TCU. And we saw where Kendry Miller, what he did. And Imani Bailey was just as good as him and kind of carries those similar McKinnon third down passing back type traits, along with a fast 40. So yeah, I think that's what the exciting part is with this running back room going into this season is, you got some really unproven athletes with, a for sure opportunity that one of them's making the 53. And it's going to be pretty sweet to see who kind of rises to the top, in this preseason.
Yeah. And then what could also be interesting is if Andrew Reid has one of his kind of tricks up his sleeve when Pacheco had his breakout year, actually. That was his rookie year, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Where everyone thought that the Chiefs would not do as well because of losing Tyreek.
They lost Tyreek.
And all that kind of stuff.
Tyreek's number.
Yeah. I said, here you go. and then Pacheco comes out and starts running dudes over and killing it. And so they could go back to like a big man running style team to kind of allow Kelsey to not have to be the man and kind of keep him healthier, but kind of keep him running and active, and then maybe run the ball a little bit more, and then mix in your new wide receiver weapons and kind of, kind of go on this arc rather than having to kind of come out the gate and kind of pass the ball all over the yard.
Yeah. And I mean, honestly too, I mean, depending on how the rest of this offseason progresses, I mean, they might have to put a little more emphasis on running the ball because, probably going to be without Rashee Rice for half a season. You got, don't know what Worthy's going to be or how quickly he can come up to speed. Don't know what the hell is going to happen with Kadarius Toney. And then you got Hollywood Brown. So, I mean, like, they might have to put a little bit more emphasis in the running back room and using that position. So, yeah, it's going to be exciting to see how those guys fit into it because they're all like they fit the type of running back Andy Reid likes. So that's why, it's going to be fun to see that. Yeah,
no, I completely agree. Jack, hit me up behind the scenes with regards to Audric. I have some thoughts, obviously, but I don't want to go in and go too heavy only on the Broncos or really too heavy on each of our teams. So hit me up. We'll chat for sure. But we are
fingers crossed, DJ.
Yeah, we are coming up on time here for the show. We've had a great show so far, covered a fair amount of ground. Alex, I hope your team gets the memo. Stop breaking the law.
Yeah. Stop breaking the law, asshole.
Hey, Richie, I'm going to hit you up on email. I need to talk with you about what it takes to put this broadcast on my channel, too.
Sure.
Okay.
So that's kind of where we're at with everything on the show today, guys. Next week, I am going to be trying to get one of our AFC North opponents, perhaps even joining us live, if possible. I thought that'd be kind of a cool idea to kind of bring someone on. So I will announce which one I'm able to bring on for the show next week. We can kind of come questions in hand and all that good stuff. I think that'd be kind of a neat concept for a show since we all play the AFC North.
Do we get to beat them up?
Yeah.
Well, you gotta be careful with that.
It will be a live show in the desert.
Yeah,
in the octagon.
Yeah, I think you got to be pretty careful because AFC North is built different than we are as teams, and they traditionally do very well against the West.
Priest now.
Yeah. So, anyways, guys, until next week, where the West Side is in fact the best side, and we got more AFC West news for you. Peace.
Fast lane when I pass in the street, bag of money in the passenger seat. Simcoe's been asking for me on the road from the west to the east. Way up, I might never come down, cause the coast racking up the flight miles. So high, I might never come down, so what, this is my lifestyle. Wait a minute.